Became HaYehudim, the Jewish people accepted upon themselves what they had begun to do. When did they started? Giving them the Torah Mount Sinai. They finished it at Purim. What is so distinct about Purim? Purim is the time that they displayed Mesiras Nefesh. Mordechai, who was the Moshe Rabbeinu of that generation, brought it out within them, as we see from his study with the children in public, and the children were willing to sacrifice themselves for Mordechai, etc. Questions we have? The whole thing is about Mesiras Nefesh. They're willing to sacrifice themselves for Torah. Why are we talking about Mordechai and the school children? We compared the spiritual state of the Jewish people at the giving of the Torah on Har Sinai, the highest of heights, Purim, darkness, exile, very low place as far as spiritually. Then we also compared it physically, grave danger, freedom. Why are we comparing the physical? Why is the emphasis on Mesiras Nefesh? The whole point of Torah is to live for the mitzvos. Mesiras Nefesh is one of many mitzvos, and not just that, but the generation that was going to land for sure were willing. So what's the deal that they showed Mesiras Nefesh? So that's actually what clinched it. And then Purim Hanukkah, 2 times that they had to risk themselves for Torah study. What is it about Purim? We saw a lot of text about Mesiras Nefesh and when you have to sacrifice yourself for God, etc. It still wasn't about Mesiras Nefesh. Eventually we'll get to the answer to that. First we have to understand what's the whole thing about the giving of the Torah. Giving of the Torah wasn't just about telling us the laws, it was the time of the fusion. The physical, material, and spiritual holiness fused together, because until then they were total opposites, wrong sides of the magnet, and here they were finally able to come together. The spiritual can affect the material can retain spiritual, not just be elevated but be transformed by it. How do two opposites make peace when something greater unites them? And that's the revelation of God, or in Sof, that happened at Mount Sinai that made that possible. And that brought us into this bulk of the Maamar. We have the 3 aspects of mitzvah after Matan Torah. So when Matan Torah introduced, then we have these 3 aspects, these 3 dimensions. Tachton, the lower aspect, what's physical remains physical. Elyon, the higher aspect, the spiritual remains spiritual. Batel, the fusion, where now they're both affecting each other. United, they override their own selves, basically. So we see that in the fulfillment of a mitzvah. Lower aspect of it, it's habituated by the body, the animal soul. The body has been trained into doing the mitzvah. That's a physical aspect. The higher aspect is a desire to connect to God because of love. My soul loves God. I want to connect him, so I'm going to do what he says. But obviously, it's higher than just habit. That's one level up. And then subjugated, the batel, God says, so that's why I do. Even if my body doesn't want to do it, I override that. If my love is not great enough, I override that also. Material and spiritual come together because so says God. So we saw a lot of text on that. And then we got to the whole idea of the 3 approaches to doing a mitzvah. Mitzvahs were given to refine man in creation. That was all the text about why does God care if you shecht an animal like this or like that? Why does he care? Mitzvahs were given to refine man in creation. We each have our slice of the world that we're supposed to elevate. How do you know what it is? Wherever you end up, that's where it is. Mitzvahs were given so we could walk on Hashem's ways and connect with him in levels above creation. God, unlike a regular king, doesn't just, here, do these mitzvahs. God does the mitzvahs and he gives it to us to do. Mitzvahs make man significant and connect him to the essence of the commander. The whole idea of essence is something that's beyond all these other levels. Essence is core. This essence, all things being equal in essence, because essence is indivisible. You could have, this is higher than this is higher than this is higher than this, but then once you reach essence, everything is just the same. It's just core of the sun at that point. So the potential for everything is in there, but everything is all the same in essence. That's why we keep going there, because they're all things being equal. So we did text for all that. We saw the word mitzvah as tzafsa and chibur. It's a language of connection. The whole thing about how the whole world was created just for Jewish people to be doing Torah mitzvahs. That brings us now to the next level of things, the next application of these 3 dimensions. The motivation for Torah learning. Everything we did until now was all mitzvah oriented, and now we're going to pivot over. We're going to do Torah oriented, applying these 3 aspects, 3 dimensions to Torah. Motivation of Torah learning. Tachton, Elyon, Batel. The lower level is for the benefit of the intellect. It's motivated by the natural appreciation for intellectual pursuits regardless of spiritual awareness. As in, what motivates me to study Torah? Very smart. I want to learn. Smartness. I like to learn stuff. Intellect driven, you see how that's the physical aspect of things. Like the same way the body gets habituated to stuff, you're focusing on whatever the physical motivation is. Elyon, the higher aspect, the benefit of the soul motivated by neshama to connect to Hashem. So the soul wants to connect to God, and if God is in Torah, I'm going to connect to God through studying his Torah, through studying his wisdom. Batel, the subjugated, the nullified fusion aspect, the benefit of the Torah. Why do I study Torah? Because Torah is Torah and Torah must be studied. There's no motivation but learning for its own sake, because Torah must be learned. So it's not about my intellect, as in, oh, this is interesting stuff. It's not just about that. It's not just about my soul wants to connect to God. It's not about that. It's Torah and Torah must be learned. That's why I study Torah, because Torah must be studied. So we can see how that's an overriding of the other 2. The lower aspect, the tachton, motivated by the natural appreciation for intellectual pursuits. When it's motivated by the intellect, as in the body and the natural soul, that which drives the physical aspects of ourselves, anyone could appreciate this aspect of learning, no matter their spiritual awareness or essential connection to Torah. So I'm studying Torah just because I like to study, so it doesn't even matter what my spiritual connection is. My spiritual connection could be anything. Anybody at any level can access this practice. So it's not even about where you're coming from, where you're going, etc. It's just, oh, this is smart, this is wisdom, I'll study it. This is a verse from Parshas V'eschanan. Shmartem v'asisem ki hi chachmaschem uvinaschem ve'enei amim. Asher yishbun es kol chukim ha'ela v'amru rakam chacham v'navan agaya agadol hazeh. We actually had reference to this verse in the Hanukkah Maamar about the Greeks were like, can't you just study because it's smart and take God out of this whole intellectual pursuit? No, we cannot. And you shall keep them and do them in the mitzvos, for that is your wisdom and your understanding in the eyes of the nations, who will hear all these statutes and say, only this great nation is a wise and understanding people. This verse is speaking to the fact that physical motivation is the intellectual pursuit. Anybody can recognize that Torah has much wisdom in it. Then we have the higher level, the Elyon level. That's the benefit of the soul motivated by the neshama to connect to Hashem. And this is from the Zohar. Disanenan tlas dargin. Inon miskashran dabda. Kuchabrichu araisav Yisrael. The Rashbi Rebbe Shimon Bar Yochai wrote the Zohar, hiding in the cave from the Romans. There are three dots tied to each other: Holy and blessed be He, Torah, and the Jewish people. Speaking about how the benefit of the soul motivated by Hashem to connect to Hashem is talking about here the three knots. The Torah is the connecting knot between Hashem and the Jewish people. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who was a student of Rabbi Akiva, he was part of the second wave of students. He's buried in Meron. The acronym that they call him by is Rashbi. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai lived in the time of the Romans. So this is after the destruction. Rabbi Akiva, after all the years of study, he had 24,000 students. During this time between Pesach and Lag BaOmer, there was a plague that broke out among the students. So you do the math, 24,000 died in a period of like 5.5 weeks. Why did they die? Because they didn't give each other proper respect. You can't just take it at face value like that, because Rabbi Akiva, who said, love your fellow like yourself, they were students. Pretty sure they would have got the message. So we explain it by saying that their love for each other was almost like a suffocating kind of love. I love you so much, I want to correct the way you're doing things. So it wasn't that they didn't love each other, it's just their love wasn't done correctly. That's what it means that they didn't have respect for each other. They weren't respecting each other's differences. So there's a plague that broke out and wiped out 24,000 students. And it stopped on Lag BaOmer. That's one reason why Lag BaOmer is a joyous day. But that's also why this time of Sphira, the counting of the Omer, it's a somber time. So no live music and there's no weddings. You're not supposed to get haircuts, buy new stuff. Kind of like actually the 3 weeks. So Rabbi Akiva, of all people, he started again. Got another 5 students and he started teaching them all over again. These 5 students, 5 great Torah scholars. So that's one thing about Lag BaOmer. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, he was sitting, 2 other rabbis, I don't remember, they were talking about the Romans. So one of them was saying, oh, the Romans did great stuff. They built roads, they built this, whatever. It's not too bad that the Romans are here. One of the rabbis stayed silent. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai spoke out against it. Word gets around, the walls of ears kind of thing, and when they found out about it, he had to go on the run. So he ended up hiding in a cave for 12 years, and he came out of 13 years. He hid in the cave with his son, Rabbi Eliezer, and during that time, they basically just studied Torah all day long, and he wrote the Zohar. The Zohar is the book of Kabbalah. It's not the only text that exists, but it's considered the book of Kabbalah. You're in a cave for 12 years. You kind of disassociate from the rest from the real world. If we could imagine what kind of heights he reached, it's just all day long he's dealing in Torah study. He was in a different world, to the point that when he came out, and he's looking around at the world, he's like, what are these people engaging in mundane stuff? Whatever happened over there, God told him, you gotta go back to the cave. You have to understand this is the way the world works. People have to farm and do stuff. They're not all on Zohar level. He went back to the cave for another year, and then he came out and was able to be... So when he died, he said, I don't want my passing to be a day of sadness, I want it to be a day of joy. So that's another reason why we celebrate Lag BaOmer. Okay, so what is the higher level, the Bata level? That is the benefit of Torah, no motivation, but that Torah must be learned. So it's not about intellectual pursuits. It's not about the motivation. I want to connect to God, and the Torah is my connector to God. It's about Torah is Torah, and Torah must be learned. There's no motivation of benefit, not whatever I'm going to get out of it. Torah is the goal unto itself because it's one with Hashem's essence, and essence is essential, not dependent on or an intermediary for anything else. So Torah is Torah, and Torah must be learned. The whole idea of essence, the core of you, is something simple, whole, and indivisible. So you can't even describe it. So here we're talking about God's essence, and Torah is one with God's essence. You can't put a parameter, you can't put a measurement on Torah because it's essence. There's no containment for essence. The same idea that essence is just essence, so Torah is Torah, Torah must be learned. We've actually learned some of these parts. The divine soul has 3 garments: thought, speech, and action of Torah mitzvos. Unlike physical garments, which are less important than their wearer, the garments of the divine soul are higher than the soul wearing them. As Torah and the commandments are one with Hashem, the Jew through these garments unites with him. Remember, the body is a small city, the godly soul and the animal natural soul. There's also an intellectual soul, but that's not part of this discussion. They're at war with each other. They both want control over the body because there's only one set of thought, speech, and action. So I want the body, I want all of it to be through my expression, to express my thought, speech, action. The divine soul is in the godly soul. Its thought, speech, and action, when it expresses itself through thought, speech, and action, it's always Torah and mitzvahs oriented. Usually when a person wears garments because you can take them off and put them on at will, we have control over thought, speech, and action. Usually the garments are secondary to you. Wear this today, wear that tomorrow, or whatever. When it comes to the godly soul, when the garments of thought, speech, and action, they're actually higher. Why? Because thought, speech, and action of Torah mitzvahs are higher because they connect it to God. They're uniting us with God. The garments raise the soul up to a higher level. Now these three garments, deriving from the Torah and its commandments, though they are called merely garments of the nefesh, ruach, and neshama, nevertheless their quality of the garments of the Torah and its commandments is infinitely higher and greater than that of the nefesh, ruach, and neshama themselves. As explained in the Zohar, Torah and the Holy One, blessed be He, are entirely one. God and the Torah are one. There's no separation between God and Torah. When we delve into Torah mitzvos, we're raising ourselves up. The garments raise us up to that level. This means, since Torah is the wisdom and will of the Holy One, blessed be He, as in the wisdom of Torah expresses God's wisdom, its practical application in laws, example whether or not a particular object is kosher, expresses His will. The fact that this is kosher, this is not kosher, is according to what God has desired, that this is how it should be, this is what I want for it to be. That's His will. It's one with His glory and essence, since He is the knower, the knowledge, and the known, as explained in chapter 2 in the name of the Rambam. These three aspects, separate and distinct in terms of human intellect, are, as they relate to God, one and the same entity. They're all godliness. Torah mitzvahs are all part of God, because Torah and God are one. So when we study Torah, unite with Torah, we're connecting at the level of essence. Essence is essence, Torah is Torah, Torah must be learned. Humans are incapable of grasping divine thought. How then can it be said that in understanding Torah, man grasps God's wisdom? Hashem compressed and lowered His wisdom. Remember the vacuum packing. Hashem compressed and lowered His wisdom, clothing it in physical terms and objects of Torah and its mitzvahs, so that it's accessible to human intelligence, that man may thereby be united with God. We cannot grasp God, of course, but God compressed Himself into a unit that we could study. Torah mitzvahs, this is now we can access, because otherwise it's beyond access to us. God gave us the abridged version. We have the Spark Note version of God almost. That's what Torah mitzvahs we can understand on our level then.